It's time to sit back and check out the RCWR show with Lee Sanders. Get fun, in-depth coverage and analysis from the latest in professional wrestling in AEW, WWE, NWA, Impact Wrestling, or the world of entertainment. From hit TV shows to your favorite sports like the NBA or NFL. All things music, movies, and beyond, while trying to make sense of this crazy world we live in. All while keeping it honest, insightful, and interactive since 2011. And now your hosts, live from the nation's capital of Washington, D.C., Lee Sanders.
Hey, my pretty babies, what's going on? Lee Sanders back with you guys for another edition of the RCWR show. We are reviewing individually each episode of the Mr. McMahon docuseries that is on Netflix. It definitely has a decent amount of people on social media talking about this. I know Medusa recently offered some comments on her podcast talking about how she was approached to participate in this series. And it's interesting, her comments, because she said that basically a year to 2 years ago, the producers reached out to her and they were trying hard to get her to participate in this, basically dangling in front of her face, hey, Vince McMahon is doing this, he's participating in this. And her whole thought process was, okay, well, hey, that's cool that Vince is doing it and all that. That's great. Okay, well, I'll think about it. And the more and more that she thought about it, she said, yeah, I really didn't want to have anything to do with that. I want to make sure that we don't take her out of context. Direct quote, they contacted me. They wanted me in this thing so bad. They contacted me. I don't know. About a year ago, 2 years ago, maybe, they were already starting this and they were like, it'll be cool. Vince is involved. He's doing it. I'm like, oh, that's cool. I'm like, no, I'm like, okay, if Vince is doing it. She followed up saying, but something in my gut, I'm telling you, we all have that natural instinct. And you've got to follow your gut because that was my money maker in this business. I'm like, nope. And I'm so glad I had nothing to do with it. No, I'll never forget. I have the conversations, they're in emails. I have those conversations. I'm assuming in regards to the conversations, the emails, she's basically saying her correspondence with the producers. She has that just in case they try to, I guess, deny it or whatever. She basically is letting folks know, her listeners and fan base knows, she has the receipts to back up what she's saying and everything. I just wish that she would have elaborated more on not participating in this docu-series, because if you're gonna open the door a little bit, my thought process has always been, why not just go all the way? Don't just crack that door open, kind of look in between a little bit. No, just go on ahead, kick that some bitch open, step foot in there, go look for a place to sit down and check the place out. I wish she was a little bit more candid about why she didn't want to participate in this. Did she get the impression that this was going to be some type of, I know some people, at least if you're Bruce Pritchard, you're looking at this and you're claiming it's a hit piece, not to jump too far ahead, but your man did watch all the episodes. I was able to burn through the rest of them today, but the way we want to do this is break it down and individually talk about each episode. But just seeing what Bruce Pritchard had to say, I can't help but wonder, okay, well, Medusa, is this kind of your thought process as well, or you just don't want to be involved in any kind of controversy? Because if you are thinking about yourself, your brand, your image, and all that, and you don't want to have anything to do with that sensitive of a topic, that is Vince McMahon, right? I hate when you, as a listener, as a fan, you have to continue to ask these questions to yourself. Now, before some people say, oh, well, it's really none of her business. Well, look, if she's going to go on her podcast, pretty much out there, public domain, and she's going to talk about it publicly, why not go all the way? If you don't want to, then why not just go, no comments? Just something to marinate on, y'all. But episode 2, we're talking about, and for those of you that checked out my episode 1 live reaction, you know that at the top I said, I have a feeling that throughout this series, the recurring theme I'm going to have for myself here is tell me something I don't know. Again, I'm going into this docu-series with a blank slate of memory, and I'm going into this going, okay, I'm optimistic. I am hopeful that during the process of this docu-series, I am going to be learning about stuff I have never ever heard of before. I'm going to be hearing some interesting stories. I'm going to be seeing some interesting people. Like that is where my thought process is. And the main theme that I had going into episode 1, and I'm echoing it here again with episode 2, is tell me something that I don't know. So, how would I sum up episode number 2 of this Mr. McMahon docu series in a nutshell? I would say this was nothing more than a big old fat nothing burger. Once again, I'm going into this, I'm going, tell me something I don't know. And we get a little bit of revisionist history as far as I'm concerned. Now, look, for a person that's been following the WWE product, gee, I don't know, say for 15, 20, 25, 30 years, you're seeing some of these stories that's covered so far, and you're going, yeah, no, I already know this. Like, I'm good. But if you are a newer fan, or if you've been out of touch on the WWE product for so many years, then it's a case where, okay, well, catch me up to speed. Give me the breakdown. Let me know what's been going down since last I checked in on this. What's up? Then this is definitely a pretty good docu series for you if you really wanted to know the nitty gritty on some of the most, I would say, dark days of WWE shortly after the success of the very first WrestleMania, then going into WrestleMania 2. And in regards to WrestleMania 2, I need for a lot of people to really think about this. And I'm glad they had highlighted it because it was a great achievement that Vince McMahon and crew had accomplished with WrestleMania 2, which was, okay, let's go into this event. And the way we're going to up the ante from the first WrestleMania, we're going to host WrestleMania from 3 different cities, all live. So just any and everything is going to happen. And definitely there was your fair share of technical difficulties, but they did it live from Los Angeles, Chicago, New York. And you just think about that for back then in the 80s. I really need for people to understand it. We're talking about a day and age back then where the best way I can really break it down and make it be as simplistic as possible, technology wise, something that a lot of us take for granted, especially those of us that maybe are in the field of media production. Maybe you're a video editor or whatnot. Something that we take for granted, that is, if you are of a certain age, is the fact that these days, when it comes to editing any type of video footage, you've got software programs such as Sony Vegas, you've got Adobe Premiere, you've got Final Cut, and you can easily do what you need to do and then export everything up to the cloud. Or you can do something as simple as once you get done making all your edits, and you're trying to send a copy to somebody, or maybe you want to carry that work with you and work on it at another location. You got a little something called a flash drive, which is what I'm holding in my hand right here. And it's just amazing how these little tiny things is capable of just really we really take these things for granted. I tell you, just this little tiny thing that I'm holding in my hand, has all of the great content that you're working on. If you're a video editor, if you're working with sound or pictures, what have you. Back then, you had to go through physically, you had to go through wheels of of tape, basically trying to splice together stuff. And we didn't have the 16 by box ratio. It pretty much was like, I don't know, 4 by 9 or whatever back in the day, whatever the weird dimensions were, but it was more box size as opposed to a rectangular as far as your video format and all that goes. So, it's those little things that we take for granted. So here you have Vince McMahon and crew back then leading up to this WrestleMania 2 going, okay, well, how can we really, what is there to accomplish here as far as challenging ourselves? What like really hasn't been done? And so to be able to host one live spectacle of an event that is WrestleMania from 3 different cities live. I mean, so much could go wrong with that, but then at the same time, so much could go right with that. And, I remember growing up checking out WrestleMania 2. I remember being pretty excited for it and everything. And I remember walking away from it. I liked it. But it's interesting because when I got older, a lot older, I would say late teens, and I ended up watching it again, for the first time in many, many years, I definitely walked away from it going, you know what? This wasn't as good as the very first WrestleMania, at least in my eyes. That may ruffle some, wrestling fans the wrong way, but for me, it was okay, but it wasn't the right. So I want to read to you guys the results real quick because that's something that was greatly overlooked on episode 2 here. So from the NASA Coliseum, you had Paul Orndorff taking on the magnificent Morocco. Meanwhile, Randy Savage faced George the Animal Steel. Third matchup for the card at that event, at that stadium. Jake Roberts faced George Wells. And you had, oh, by the way, Randy Savage taking on George the Animal Steel. That was for the WWF Intercontinental Championship. And your main event at the Nassau Coliseum was Mr. T taking on Roddy Piper in a boxing match. Now, I do like I remember how excited I was in regards to Mr. T, Roddy Piper as a kid way back then. And I still feel the same way that I feel all these years later, which is okay, as far as like one of the main events go from just this WrestleMania card as a whole. That was one of the matches I remember looking the most forward to, and still to this day going, damn, that was pretty good. Meanwhile, Rosemount Horizon, Chicago, Fabulous Moolah faced Velvet McIntyre for the WWF Women's Championship. Meanwhile, Corporal Kreikner, hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. If I am not, all apologies in advance. Nikolai Volkov flag match. Andre the Giant was in a WWF versus NFL Battle Royale. Meanwhile, for the WWF Tag Team titles, the British Bulldogs took on the Dream Team that consisted of the Greg Valentine, Brutus Beefcake. Nothing really spectacular there from what I can remember. And at the Los Angeles Memorial Sports Arena, Ricky Steamboat faced Hercules Hernandez. Adrian Adonis faced Uncle Elmer. Terry and Haas Funk faced Tito Santana in the Junkyard Dog. And in your main event match, Hulk Hogan took on King Kong Bundy steel cage match for the WWF World Heavyweight Championship. The Hogan King Kong Bundy match, I did like the way that feud was built up. I remember being a young kid and just looking at how week after week King Kong Bundy was destroying the hell out of the Hulkster, and I actually liked it. I was digging it because back then, I always gravitated towards the heels. I was still a Hulk Hogan fan, but man, I loved, even as a kid, I loved rooting on the bad guy. There's just something always intriguing I found about the bad guy. So I thought it was pretty badass how he wrecked him up pretty good. But yeah, I mean, our opinions may differ on that card, but for me, there was only just three matches at most where I said, okay, I'm really excited to check these out and everything. But they were not exaggerating whatsoever. The experts that was on and featured here on episode 2 talking about how, yeah, WrestleMania 2, it was successful, but it wasn't as, and I think when you really break it down in layman's terms, quality wise and all that, it just wasn't as good as that first one. Sure, they did good monetary wise, but it just wasn't as good as that first one. Something else that was highlighted on here, and there was just a whole lot of information. I mean, they really only went over the, what's the right word I'm looking for? They only really gave you the sound bites, which was leading up to this almost WrestleMania 3, Jesse the Body Ventura trying to talk to the other wrestlers and unionize, because his whole thought process was, look, we're out here, we're busting our asses for this guy, for this company, 7 days a week. We're not getting any time off. And I'm really glad that they highlighted how it was back then, because we're in this day and age right now where, and look, I'm happy for any man or woman that laces up a pair of boots. I'm really happy for them that they're in this position now where if they need to take some time off, they're able to do that. Whether it is they need to take just a personal leave just for some R&R, or they've got something going on in the family, whether it be urgent or non-urgent. It's nice that in these times they're able to get that necessary time off. There's a big part of me that is happy that they are able to work limited dates now and still get the type of money and command the type of money where they're able to take care of their family. I wish that, and I'm gonna say something, and we're switching it up a little bit with the talk of each episode, and you'll find that as we go into each episode, there's a lot of gaps that's been left open where you just can't help but, hopefully you're not screaming at the television here, but as you're watching this, you can't help but go, man, why not pick the brain of Vince McMahon? You've got access to him. Of all the questions you can ask, why aren't you going in this direction? It's almost, it would be the equivalent of, and I'm going to mess this up, so I apologize in advance, but it's almost like if you can climb to the top of this mountain, if you can survive all the weather that's coming your way, the possible volcano storm, if you can get past some of these boulders that's going to be coming at you, if you can get past all that and you can reach the top of the mountain, there will be this great wise man that will be there, and you will be able to ask any question you want to ask. You've got access to them for 1 hour. And then after that, that is it. You will magically just fall asleep and you will wake up at the bottom of the mountain. And then that'll be it. Like you won't be able to, right? Like basically when you wake up, you will be back home. You won't even be at the bottom of the mountain. You'll just be back home. All right. It's like, wow. And I can ask any question. Like you can ask any question. And to just continue to get the same regurgitated, like for me, I would have loved to known more about Vince McMahon's thought process back then about what Jesse Ventura was trying to do as far as unionizing. And, if he was for it, really get him to officially go on record. Now, before anybody goes, but Lee, we pretty much kind of heard that Vince had said to the wrestlers, "Hey, I'm aware." You know, apparently this was what the wrestler said that Vince said, which is, "Hey, I'm aware you're trying to do this whole meeting and all that. If you do this meeting, your ass is fired." I wish that the production team would have confronted Vince McMahon about it, because as you're watching this docu-series, there's certain things that pop up, and the production crew does a fantastic job in going, "Hey, da 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 da." This is like, "Oh, well, we've never done, da, 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 but you guys did, da 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 da." Oh, we did? Yeah, you did. You did, in the year, da. And Vince just kind of has this look on his face like he's trying to sell, he's pulling up Ronald Reagan. I don't remember, or whatever, without actually saying, I don't remember. But it really would have been nice to really get him to go a little bit more in depth about that, um, highlighting, how it was back then for the wrestlers. y- y- Here's another thing too that you could have asked Vince McMahon about and everything, which is, okay, so obviously the industry has changed. Everybody's working less dates, all that other great stuff. But at the same time, it seems as though that there are more wrestlers that's somehow getting injured more frequently. Hey Vince, what's your 2 cents about that? Do you think there's a right balance currently for the industry and people that's on the road? Should they be on the road a little bit more? Should more house shows be at play here for the industry as a whole? Really would have been nice to, pick his brain a little bit more on that. And you'll just constantly find yourself as you're watching this docu series in that same position. Well, why didn't they go in this direction? Why didn't they go in? And then of all the people that they could interview for this docu series, you go with Phil Mushnick, this New York Post columnist who has had a hard on for Vince McMahon for decades. I don't know what this man did. I don't, yeah, I'm talking about Vince McMahon. I don't know what the hell this man did to piss off Phil Mushnick. I don't know if he refused to buy him a drink, get him a hoagie sub, or what. But this dude has had a hard on for him for decades. Now, some of it is definitely justified. It is. It's definitely justified. And I would imagine Phil Mushnick these days is probably feeling justified. He's probably pulling that Leonardo DiCaprio meme. What I tell you, right? He's in his sofa, he's got the cigarette in his hand, a can of beer, and he's pointing at the television. I'm sure that's probably him right now when he's seeing all of the stuff that's been happening with Vince McMahon, these more recent years and everything. But some of the stuff with Phil Mushnick, like with the whole Jimmy Snooker thing. I know our younger listeners know everything about the whole Jimmy Snooker thing, and if you don't, because again, what you got and what you keep getting with this docu series, it's only little sound bites. Unfortunately, But what I would definitely recommend that you guys do, and I know some people are going to be like, "Oh, well, you got the Dark Side of the Ring episodes. You got some of those that's floating around." And yeah, you could give those an honorable mention, right? You could give the Dark Side of the Ring episodes on the steroid trial, Owen Hart, Chris Benoit, Jimmy Snuka, the Montreal screw job. You could give Dark Side of the Ring those honorable mentions, but here's the thing. Much like what's happening with this Mr. McMahon docu-series, it falls into the same category of the Dark Side of the Ring. And look, I love the Dark Side of the Ring guys. I respect the hell out of them. We had them on the show a handful of years ago, uh, when the series was like first starting. I think they were either in their first or second season. We had them on, and it was a blast, and all of that. But unfortunately, some 45, 50 minutes is not going to be enough to go over the most important things for a episode or for a limited series. It's not going to be enough. You really owe it to yourselves to go online and uh, find some really good books that's talking about all of these things. Even reading a really good newspaper article from back in the day on said subjects and everything. You really owe it to yourselves to do that, because what you're getting here with stuff like this Mr. McMahon docu series, it's just sound bites. That's it. You're only getting a little taste. And it's one of those things where if you want to learn a little bit more, you've really got to go out of your way, and you're going to have to do the homework on your own. For instance, as you're telling the story, Phil Mushnick, who did a fantastic job in covering what went down with Jimmy Snuka, Nancy Argentino, the woman that basically, he killed and all that. You look at that whole situation. Phil Mushnick was like the guy that was like, wait a minute, something weird's going on here. There's just something. And one thing, to my point, that they did not talk about in regards to that whole Jimmy Snooker thing and all that. Before that all went down, Snooker was hot. I mean, he was white hot. He was so goddamn popular. I mean, you just felt as a wrestling fan, this is our guy. This is the one that's definitely going to be probably the next WWF champion here and all that. But after the stuff had went down at that hotel that infamous night, and then you have the alleged story that Vince McMahon had popped up at a police station with a briefcase, and the next thing you know, he was able to get Jimmy Snuka out, and the rest, as they say, was pretty much history. Pretty much after that, that career trajectory of Jimmy Snuka in the WWF was never the same. It went on such a significant decline. That's the one thing that, no matter what different opinions people may have about whether or not Jimmy Snuka did or he didn't, the one thing that everybody can definitely agree on, that career trajectory wasn't the same after that night. Just thought it was kind of weird that they, didn't talk about that. And why am I going on and on and on about this? Well, gee, I don't know. You fucking had an opportunity to ask Vince McMahon, clear some of the air once and for all. Not that he's going to come clean, but it would have been nice to, okay, firsthand account. We got Vince McMahon right here. He's in front of us. Hey, tell us, what was going on with you? Where were you when you got the phone call that Jimmy Snuka had got in trouble? Like, start there, and then work your way to it. Work your way to it. Hey, there's always been these stories that you apparently went to the police precinct and you had a briefcase, and nobody knows what was in the briefcase, but it was alleged that you went behind closed doors with a couple of officers, with one of the sheriffs, and next thing you know, after several minutes, you and Jimmy Snuka walked out. What happened exactly? Like, just to at least show that you're making some type of effort to, yes, we're well aware of some of these, and yes, we've got access to them. Yes, we're going there. No, no, they did not touch that whatsoever, and just stuff like that was really, really nerve wracking for me. So, and keep in mind all of these scandals, the Jimmy Snuka, the Ring Boy crew scandal. All of this is going on within a year, basically leading up to, I believe, WrestleMania 3, or it's happening in between WrestleMania 2 going into 3. You got all this stuff that's going down. The Ring Boy scandal with Mel Phillips, that's something that is well documented. Well documented. Tom Cole, all that well documented. I didn't learn anything new right there. Hearing about Terry Garvin, one of the executives, Pat Patterson. Now, the Pat Patterson thing, I want to home in on just a little bit here. And again, this is one of those things where, God damn, why didn't you pivot to Vince McMahon to get him to talk more about Pat Patterson? And it's like, okay, everybody that has spent time watching the WWF/E product, those that have spent time doing their respective research, they know how well respected Vince thought of Pat Patterson. Pat Patterson, Vince's right hand man. Pat spent a lot of time at the McMahon household. Okay. Right down to the point, safe to say, hey, that's Uncle Pat when it comes to Shane and Steph. I don't understand why they did not go to Vince here and try to get him to talk more about it. But instead, we had Bruce Pritchard, which I just thought was, I'm not going to trust a goddamn thing you got to say. I'm going to look at what Vince has to say, obviously kind of cockeyed with my head tilted, but you feel where I'm coming from. So for those of you that have not watched this docu-series yet, you need to kind of have some of this going in your brain here a bit, right? You really, really got to. The whole Pat Patterson thing. Hearing the whole response that okay, so the investigation went down. Mel felt God, the damn referee guy. I'm drawing a blank. Mel Phillips. He eventually gets fired from WWF. Guy never comes back. Same thing that happens with Terry Garvin. But then Pat Patterson, okay, so he's either released or he steps down, however you want to spin it. Look, he's gone from the company, but he comes back months later. You got Dave Meltzer who says, yeah, well, I had spoke back then to, didn't he say Vince? I'm pretty sure he said Vince. I spoke with Vince, and Vince told me that of the people that were fired, as far as who was actually in the clear, Pat Patterson is in the clear. And Meltzer goes, okay, well, if he's in the clear, why are you letting him go? Why are you letting him step away from the company? And Vince is just pretty much, you don't know how the business works. Like, come on. And it's pause on that one, because I just found that to be kind of nerve wracking. It's like, okay, yeah, what's going on here? And this was their opportunity to go right back to Vince and go, okay, so what was going on with Pat Patterson? If the man was found innocent through your respected investigation and all of that, then why'd you have this guy step down on it? Like, what the hell? And it's so funny because when you look at the Pat Patterson documentary that came out a couple of years before he died, it's pretty much, oh, everybody knew Pat Patterson was gay. Everybody knew he was out. He was very flamboyant about it. But boy, I tell you what, when the cameras were on and he needed to be in front, it's like, oh, okay, all right, well, cool. But everybody's, oh, yeah, everybody knew. We respected him so much. Okay, well, if that's the case and you find this guy to be innocent, like, that doesn't make sense to me. Why would you accept the resignation of this guy if he's innocent? Or why would you force somebody to step down? Like, that makes no sense to me whatsoever. Now I think the way that maybe was supposed to be cleaned up by the production crew and everything, if the way that it was supposed to be spun was, look, at the time when all of it had went down and they were needing to do their investigation and all that, hey, if it was a case where Pat was not trying to be a distraction, a unwarranted distraction, and ultimately this is why he said to Vincent crew, look, let me just get away because this is unnecessary heat that you guys need to get. Okay, well then at least let's fucking have that be the official reason why. So for Meltzer to get the kind of response that he had got, it's definitely baffling. And the fact that, again, throughout this docuseries, there's several instances where there is, oh yeah, we didn't, we didn't dip into any type of violence where, people were getting shot or stabbed, and then they cut away to right. I mean, so they're doing like this fact checking and everything. Like, it's nerve wracking. It's very, very nerve wracking. But Tony Atlas, the real fucking MVP of this docu series, definitely for episode 2 here, and just talking about this whole scandal stuff, right? You got Bruce Pritchard, who's going, oh, we never found anything in regards to Pat Patterson. Totally clean, innocent, the other people can't speak on. You go to Tony Atlas, and Tony Atlas going, that guy touched my pecker. The producers are going, wait, what? Hey, that dude touched my pecker. Why didn't you go to Vince McMahon? You don't know nothing about the business. I ain't gonna go to no Vince McMahon. Well, no, why? Seriously, why won't you go to Vince McMahon? You can't go to Vince McMahon. Like, come on, what's he gonna do? And they're continuing to press him, like, no, like, seriously, if these things are being done to you and everything, why can't you go to the higher ups? And my thought process is exactly, which is, hey, this is being done to me. Like, you better take care of this, or else I'm gonna have to take matters in my own hands. And Tony Atlas laid it down. And the answer that he gave might have sounded so messed up, but it was the God's to honest truth, which was, in layman's term, if it's going to be him versus Pat Patterson during that time, oh, at the end of the day, forget about it. Tony Atlas is going to be shown the fucking door. That's a battle that he's not going to be able to win. And I appreciate the fact that they followed up with him after he gave his response and they said, okay, is it a case where you feel that Pat Patterson was protected by Vince McMahon? And Tony Atlas is like, say what you will about Tony Atlas. Some people can be like, oh, he's this dumb bald head guy with these big arms. Looks are deceiving. He is like, that's why I could sum up Tony Atlas. He is like the Charles Barkley of professional wrestling. Don't let those looks and don't let that. That's a smart motherfucker. That is a smart motherfucker. But his whole thing was, no, I don't think Vince, necessarily is protecting Pat Patterson, but what Vince is doing is protecting the business. He's protecting the business. That's the highest priority. Yeah, definitely. Definitely. I'm just looking at all of that. I found, of all the people that were saying whatever throughout this, there was only really 2 people throughout this docuseries, and I'm going to continue to give them flowers each episode. But I just felt that, okay, who's really being honest here? Who really, like, nothing to gain here? Who's really being Tony Atlas, top of my fucking list, and Shane McMahon. Those were the 2 that I really felt truly no hard on, no visceral, just telling it to you like it is. but with the highest priority of a one up going to Tony Atlas. Not let's not forget about what happened with the referee Rita Marie, that whole scandal, the alleged rape, the oral sex, just all of that. I'm surprised that they did not, the producers, reach out to her. Yeah, which brings me up to this point, and I'll definitely will be saying this again in the very near future. Anybody else finding it odd that we had the usual suspects for the most part that participated in this? I mean, it really would have been nice to see some newer, fresher faces talk about, Vince McMahon, different aspects of the business, and when certain scandals had went down. Like, for example, when the whole steroid scandal had went down, what was that, 91, 92? There, something that they greatly overlooked was the fact that when everything was looking really, really bad, Vince McMahon had reached out to a certain person and he respected them a great deal. They were from the territory days, and he respected this person a great deal and had things put in place so that in the event he was going to have to go do some jail time, this person would take over the company. It'd be a smooth transition and it pretty much would be business as usual, because Vince McMahon understood that, okay, look, there's a lot of people, it's not just about me and my family, but all these employees that are, working for the company, like they all are going to be out of jobs. Like, no, like we can't, we need to have this continue to. And the fact that that was greatly overlooked, that was not something that, they had Vince McMahon comment on more and everything. So a lot of stuff right here missing. But the Rita Marie, that whole referee scandal and everything, I remember watching some of the TV shows in question back in the day with my mom, because my mom was a big fan of the Donahues, the Oprah Winfreys, and all those shows that was running around back then. And I definitely remember watching that episode with her way back then. And then even revisiting it, years later, once the internet was really popping and everything, YouTube kicked in and everything. And I remember my thought process back then was, wow, this is so sad what happened to this woman. And I remember saying, well, I hope she gets everything, that's coming to her. And unfortunately, and I really wish this was something that they really, really highlighted, because it was a nasty stigma that was going on in the 80s and 90s, which was, okay, you have this rich, popular, powerful uh, man, okay? Whether he is involved in the entertainment industry or he's an athlete, or, he owns several property chains. There was this unfortunate bad stigma back in those respected decades where if a woman jumped out and claimed that she was sexually harassed by this man, she was forced into a uncompromising position sexually. Unfortunately, it was literally a case of he said, she said, but even worse, oh, she's just mad because we went out on this one date and I wouldn't go back with her to her place. I just didn't really feel it was going anywhere. And ever since then, she's been hell bent. She's had a hard on for me. Right? She's been trying to throw my name in the mud every chance, every opportunity that she gets. And sadly, back then, a lot of what was going on then, the women were dubbed as, oh, they're just jealous of this person's success. They're just running on their hormones. They can't have them. So, since they can't have them, they're saying all of this stuff That's false. Oh, they're just mentally disturbed. That's how the culture was back then. That's how it was back then. Taking it a step further, the whole terminology, sexual harassment, when you look up that whole definition, like the origin of it, when did it actually start? Yeah, something of that practice might have been happening in take your pick, 1930s, 40s, 50s, or even way before that. But there wasn't a, okay, what do we call this? What's happening here? Right? That did not get coined until many, many years later and all that. So, it's interesting that when they did talk to Vince about this, how he basically said, no, it was untrue. Nothing of that magnitude ever happened. But, even if it did, the limitation of stature has expired. I'm going, wait, time out. Time out. Why would you say that? Like, there is no reason for you to say that. That's almost as if you're going, well, if I did rape that bitch, as far as litigation goes, it's expired now, so can't do nothing about it. Oops, sorry. Try next time. I just I thought that was so cringe, and I felt like I was watching, what's the HBO series where they had caught some guy in a verbal trap, and it turns out he did kill his wife or whatever. Some docu-series that came out a couple of years ago. I kind of felt like I was watching a scene like that where I'm going, cue up Bill Duke, and he's going, you fucked up, right? You fucked up, right? I mean, that's how I'm literally feeling as I'm watching this. Um, but this crap, and Phil Mushnick right there documenting all of this, admitting that he was an FBI informant and that a lot of the times that the FBI was pretty much investigating Vince McMahon and the WWF, it was because of what he wrote and everything. So, and of course, getting the information about what happened with, because remember, Rita Marie went on Geraldo Rivera and, laid all this out. I definitely remember all of that. I definitely remember it. And man, boy, was she being beat up. Not just on Geraldo's show, but just TV shows back then. I just remember how she was just being beat up left and right. Like nobody was believing this woman. They really thought she was the boy that was crying wolf right here. Vince McMahon suing Geraldo production, Rita, like everybody. 1994, he ended up withdrawing his defamation lawsuit against Rita Chatterton and Geraldo Rivera. But 2023, and we talked about it here on this show during a temporary lift on the statute of limitations for alleged victims of sexual offenses in the state of New York. All right. Yeah, you had that temporary lift. Vince McMahon ended up paying a multi-million-dollar settlement to Chatterton, yet he's continuing to deny any wrongdoings. So, yeah, yeah, there's a big part of me that wishes, but given the timing of here's where I'm trying to like really, really think about this, right? So if that went down in 2023, right? If that went down in 2023, and let me go back real quick. I love this. You guys are gonna love this because we are gonna do some. Okay, so in 2021, the production crew began doing over 100 interviews that were filmed with Vince McMahon and all those other lovely people, right? But then remember when the stuff had went down with the Janelle Grant, when all that blew up, Vince McMahon was no longer available. What I'm trying to figure out is, okay, so we have an idea when, well, we definitely have a definitive time frame when the Janelle Grant stuff went down. Well, my whole thing is, if they had access to Vince McMahon in 2022, 2023, if they had access to him, it would have been nice to hear a little bit more about Rita Chatterton. As far as, okay, look, you say that, you know, you didn't do anything to this woman and, you know, what she's saying is bullshit, you know, yet you paid her. Like, so what's the real deal here? You know, what's the 411? We'd be in the right thought process as far as that goes. Like, seriously, we'd be in the right process of that. Um, I'm left again scratching my head, just going, you know, what the hell? Yeah, and then to not put a ribbon on the Jimmy Snuka stuff. Let's not forget about that. They didn't put a ribbon around that, right? So you give an epilogue to Rita Chatterton, but you don't circle back to the Jimmy Snuka stuff to the point of, hey, you know, Jimmy Snuka, they ended up trying to, you know, take this guy to jail and everything. And, you know, this is pretty much what had, right? Really would have been nice to pick this guy's brain more on some of this stuff that was going on. When Ted Turner got involved in the cable television, right? Definitely one of the godfather pioneers of news, cable news, 24/7 news. Definitely one of the godfathers for it and everything. You look at what was going on when he came across WCW, took control of it and everything. And I found it so interesting how Ted Turner was able to, okay, let me get this talent. Let me get this talent. Let me go ahead and let me get access to this talent. And then you've got Vince McMahon pulling the victim card here, giving the whole boo boo face. And it's like, dude, you literally were fucking doing the same thing to your competition in the territory. You pretty much were going to them, literally pulling a Godfather. I'm going to make them an offer they can't refuse. And when they did refuse them, I mean, you did the most dirtiest, shadiest freaking tactics that there was, right? And you're like, you want to play the victim? Like, are you serious? And the answer that he gave, and I appreciate the fact that the producers confronted him with this because they were like, you know, they called him on it, like, you literally doing the same thing here with the guys in the territories. Like, how's this different from what Ted Turner was doing? And Vince McMahon's like, I'm all about competition. What Ted Turner was trying to do, he was trying to hurt us. He was trying to kill us. He was trying to eliminate us. And it's like, sure, brother, try to spin it that way, but it's still the same. It's like it's still the same. Um, you know, the steroid scandal and all that. I remember growing up in the 80s, and yeah, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Sylvester Stallone, Dolph Lundgren. I mean, you name it. I remember watching all these big Hollywood actors back then, great freaking physiques and all that. And yeah, steroids, there was no issue back then. It was all legal, right? But it's kind of one of those things where, hey, there's this new drug that's out. Oh, great. Yeah, it does this, it does that. Okay, gimme, gimme, gimme. You know, but it takes time. In some instances, it takes months. It could take a couple of years before you learn, okay, Here's the pros of taking this drug. Here's the cons for taking this drug. Once it became a case of, okay, yo, this is an illegal substance, right? Like, because XYZ, this is what's going on. I remember how taboo it was way back then. Like once it was illegal, whatever category that was, category 3 or category 4, whatever it was. I just remember going, wow, and you're talking to somebody that experienced the steroid scandal really at its peak. Hello, Mark McGuire, Sammy Sosa, the streak. Oh my God. I remember I was big into the baseball back then. We're talking about the, mid 90s now, mid almost late 90s. Remember how big I was into baseball back then. And I remember when all that had blew up, it was a black eye for that sport. It took baseball many years, and I'm sure many uh, baseball fanatics would agree. It took many years for baseball to shake that off. It did. It really did. But I remember that Arsenio Hall interview. Hulk Hogan appearing on the show. I watched Arsenio Hall every night. I used to stay up late. I did not care. I did not care. I loved me some Arsenio Hall. I always felt that when it came to Johnny Carson, that he's okay. Johnny's good. Johnny's good. But this is kind of like you're going to go see your grandpa. Whereas Arsenio Hall, when Arsenio Hall came along, it was, yo, this is where the party is. This is where folks around my age, people in their 20s, like we're all going over here. This is where the fun is really at. And that was greatly reflected in the type of guests that would come by the show. And Arsenio Hall was a big fan of the wrestlers. He was a huge, huge fan of the wrestlers. I remember that interview. And by this point, I pretty much was off the Hulk Hogan bandwagon. Say your prayers, eat your vitamins. I pretty much was past that phase, but I remember going, yeah, because I remember reading the newspapers, watching the news, hearing about the steroid trial there and all that. I remember going, okay, all right, so Hogan's going to do this. Let's see what happens. Yeah. I want to know what Hogan's going to say here. Hogan denying that he ever used steroids. First, it was, no, never used steroids. Well, there was only 3 times that I used steroids. And I remember, even though I might have been, getting ready to be a teenager around that time, I was always years ahead of my time. That's just how I always was. My family, my friends always say that to me, man, you're years ahead of your time, maturity wise. I remember saying way back then, something don't sound right here. It's like either you did or you didn't. Like, if you're gonna say not at all, then there's no reason for you to be like, oh, 3 times it happened and it was under these. Like, you're not gonna word it, like that. You're either gonna nope or yes. And I just remember kind of looking at that going, something's not quite right. And then I also kind of looked at his body going, well, not for nothing, but this isn't the Hulkster that I remember from when I was much younger. This isn't that big, muscular looking. Like, this is a much smaller Hogan, still a big dude, but definitely smaller. Like, I don't know. I don't know. And then, man, you want to talk about career suicide when you had Billy Graham, Schultz, and a whole bunch of other people. I mean, it was literally like what happened with the whole baseball scandal. He talking about he never took steroids. I shot the motherfucker in the ass multiple times with steroids. What are you talking about? was great that they had picked Vince's brain, getting a little bit more insight into that and everything. The defect that Hogan did and going over to WCW was great hearing Shane McMahon talk about that. Shane basically saying, still pretty taboo to this very day. So obviously he's still a little bit stung by that to this very day. And I get it. I get it. You say you're going to retire from wrestling. You're not going to work for anybody else. You just want to go and do your movies and all that. And look, Hogan can spin the narrative that he wants to spin as far as I got sick and tired of being in a trailer all day, brother. And I was looking for a really good deal. And, he can spin that all he wants. Let's be real. His Hollywood career was shit. His Hollywood career was shit. And Vince McMahon did not help whatsoever. I mean, let's not forget No Holds Barred. I'm surprised they spent the amount of time that they did on that damn movie because it shouldn't even gotten the time that it did during this docuseries episode. But boy, it's bad. It is bad. How bad is it? After you watch it once, you're good. You'll never want to watch it again. Like, that is how bad it is. It leaves such a profound impact on your psyche. You never want to watch it again. But let's be real here. Let's be real here. The Hulkster participated in Rocky 3. Okay. Now, if I remember right, Rocky 1 was 76. Rocky 2 was 79. Rocky 3 was either 82 or 83. So when Hogan did Rocky 3, I mean, you're looking at him in that and you're going, yo, nice. You're like, this is wow. Look at that guy, look at that great look. Look at that great body, hey, you definitely, I remember watching him in Rocky 3, and I'm already a wrestling fan and all that, but I remember looking at him going, yeah, you know, probably going to see him in a lot more cool stuff and everything. I wish that he would have had the right team around him back then, a really good agent and all that, helping him choose the really best projects. Because sadly, you look at how Mr. T was able to capitalize. Way less corny stuff than what the Hulkster was involved in. But then some people might say, nah, it was about the same. Nah, I beg to differ. I beg to differ. But anyway, Hogan, after he did Rocky 3, you thought for sure that, okay, look, there'll be a pretty solid demand for this guy. Maybe we'll see him in, you name it. Maybe we'll see him in some really good projects here. But man, he follows up Rocky 3 with No Holds Barred. And that was a devastating blow. That was a devastating blow. He then follows it up with The Nanny, Super Commando, Gremlins 2. I probably put all that out of order, but you get the point. All of those joints, what they all got in common is when you're looking at these films, you're going, damn, this some shit that like needs to go direct to DVD. Like, this don't need to be in the theaters. Like, these things were bad. Remember how it was with Charles Bronson? Remember after really the first 3 Death Wish movies, how the production quality and all that got to a point where you swore you were looking at a made for TV movie of the week or whatever. Like, it was beyond that what Hogan was doing with some of the film projects, that the opportunities came less and less, right down to the point. I remember I think it started off as a PC game, Thunder in Paradise. I think it maybe started off as either a PC video game, or there was like a couple of TV specials or a couple of TV specials. But then ultimately there was the full-blown series of Thunder in Paradise that came about around, I would say, like 93, 94, and that series bombed. That series bombed. I remember trying to check it out on weekends because the only way you would be able to watch this show, it was in syndication. So first off, you had to keep your fingers crossed that, okay, since it's in syndication, hopefully my local blah 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 affiliate station, they're gonna air that. Because if not, then you know, kind of fuck there. But no, that show was bad. That show was bad. That show was bad. God, God, it had a promising. Oh, who am I kidding? It sucked. No, it it sucked, y'all. I'm not going to even try it. So, for those who've never seen Thunder in Paradise, think Knight Rider. Okay, David Hasselhoff, the cool ass black talking car. So basically, Thunder in Paradise was a boat that did not talk, but it was a boat that could go into this hyper, you know, bat armor, black type shit, whatever. Got missiles and all kinds of cool shit or whatever. You know, and you're like, okay, so is this really about the boat or is this about Hogan? Like a little bit confused here. And it was like following two ex Navy SEALs. One of the guys had a daughter. I don't know if it was Hogan's character that had the daughter or if it was the other guy. I think it was the other guy that was his daughter on the show. It was really bad. The show was really bad. How bad was it, Lee? It was so bad. It only lasted one season. That's how bad it was. So I say all of this to say, look, his Hollywood career, the trajectory was going in the wrong direction. So yeah, of course, when Eric Bischoff comes along, you know, hey man, we'd really love it if you could come on over here. And you know, even if it was just on a part-time basis, we'd love it if you could, you know, come on over and do something with us. You know, we can give you the money, you know, whatever you want, dates that you need. You know, Chris Lemon co-starred in that series too. The only reason why I continue to remember Chris Lemon and Thunder in Paradise, that name should sound familiar to you guys, and this will probably blow a lot of people's heads away. Chris Lemon is the son of legendary actor Jack Lemmon. And now that I've said that, some of you guys that maybe did watch Thunder in Paradise, but you never were able to connect there, you'll probably now go, wait a minute, you know, maybe look at an episode or whatever and go, holy shit, he does look just like Jack Lemmon. Like, wow, I can't believe I never knew that. You know, it's almost like when you go back and you watch The Karate Kid. Like now a lot of people are going, holy, I never knew that. But one of the guys that was in Karate Kid, the original Karate Kid movie, was the son of Steve McQueen. And now that I've said that, like now when you go back and look, you go, holy shit, he does look like his dad. Like, yeah, I can't believe I missed that. So, but yeah, like makes total sense to me why he would ultimately jump over to WCW because not really sure what's going on with Vince McMahon and all that other stuff. Your Hollywood career is on such a you know, a decline. You know, yeah, maybe Vince, yeah, even though Vince McMahon might have beat the steroid trial, just all the financial resources and all that that was used. Remember, it wasn't a publicly traded company yet, right? You know, and you want to try to do everything in your power to uh, walk from the charges, right? uh, from uh, from those guys, right? That even afterwards, not really sure what the future is going to hold for you and the WWF, right? Yeah, I mean, was it the ultimate stab in the back? Was it the ultimate betrayal? after you told somebody, hey, I'm not going to go work for another promotion. Yeah, it is a betrayal, but you know what? You got to do what you got to do because at the end of the day, you got to take care of your family. Now, some people may look at that and they may go, well, why not just go back to Vince? Why not just say, look, I want to come back, but I want to work, these limited dates. That's because of all the hurt, the friction, right? Which I think they really documented well. It's like at that point in time, there was just no way, no how that the two sides could come together. But you would like to believe that if cooler heads did prevail and all that other stuff, and in a perfect world, you know, maybe Hogan would approach Vince, hey, I'd like to come back, but here's what's up. You'd like to believe that maybe he would have had him come back and all that, but it's kind of cool how everything had played out, all things considered, which we'll talk about on the next episode. I have a poll up right now. I need you guys' help. Go on over to youtube.com/the RCWR show. Appreciate you guys that's been sounding off with your voting so far. But I'm asking you guys to help me figure out how we're going to do the reviews of this docu-series once we complete it all. I'm thinking about potentially putting out a omnibus of this, just one big volume. So you guys got some options. Go over there, vote, let your voice be heard. And as far as reviewing episode 3 of Mr. McMahon, way we got this set up right now. And I've been having fun, just sitting down after doing, a lot of studying and all that. Today was really crazy for me because I actually had to go on campus to the radio station that we have up there for a project involving radio. And I had to do a live broadcast and all that. And then I had to do some additional studying when I got home. So it was actually nice to, get in, binge on these episodes and everything. But episode 3, live reaction edition to Mr. McMahon. That's going to be going down Friday, September 27th, special time of 4 p.m. 4 p.m. The way I did this for all the shows, I did it in a way where I figured out when everybody will be most active around. Definitely will be able to check it out on demand if they miss it live initially. So that's why we're coming on at that time. Episode 4, meanwhile, that'll drop on Saturday at 7 p.m. Episode 5 will drop Sunday at 5 p.m. And then we'll wrap it up with the finale Monday night, 5 p.m. So if you miss all of that, don't worry. Just hop on the YouTube channel, youtube.com/the RCWR show. And it's literally on the home page. So right after you see the For You, look at the RCWR show live playlist and you'll see them all right there for you guys. But once again, this is another case right here that's going to continue to be a recurring theme, but don't worry, we'll expand upon it, we'll stretch it out, we'll put some fun little stuff in there in between. But really, this was another one of those cases where, yeah, you're not really telling me anything new right here that I don't already know. But I tell you what, episode 3 does get a little bit interesting, as well as there's some nice gems in 4 and 5 that I'm definitely looking forward to talking about for those respected episodes. Hey, if you enjoyed this, if you haven't done so already, make sure you do your man a huge favor. Hop on all throughout social media, share this, like it, all that. Really, it helps a ton, puts more eyeballs on the content. Yeah. And until next go round, my pretty babies, I'm wishing all of y'all to be safe. Most importantly, be kind to one another. I'll see you guys for Mr. McMahon, episode 3, live reaction edition. Take care, y'all. Peace.